Boys Season 4 has recently concluded, and with Homelander's breakdown seemingly appearing closer than ever, the chances of various characters dying is raising exponentially. So before everyone inevitably dies a horrible, gruesome death for the most petty reasons, I want to celebrate arguably the most fan-favorite character, the Deep. I'm sure someone out there can tell me that Butcher or Starlight are more popular, but for this video I'll mostly be going from my point of view when it comes to deciding who's the most popular among the fans. The Deep is an interesting case too, as I feel that his status as fan favorite, at least in the way I see it, really came during the summer of 2022 after Season 3 had dropped. Sure, he may have had some fans previously, but Season 3 gave the Deep more mainstream appeal that made him that much more popular. While the concept of this video may seem bizarre, I want to explore the possible reasons behind the Deep's popularity, as while it's mostly because the sense of humor resonates with a lot of people, the Deep's popularity, like the character, is a lot more complicated beyond the surface, seemingly at least. The character is layered and very deep. Thank you so much. Hi, I'll be here all week. I'll be in Atlanta. Come see me in Atlanta. Yep. While people watch The Boys for multiple reasons, whether it's for super sex, the action, the gore, more super sex, at its core, it's still a character drama/thriller, so it would make sense that the characters are engaging and dynamic, which is achieved for the most part, as most of the cast changed so much between their introductions and the most recent episodes. The Boys, like many other shows I assume, only have two types of characters. The important characters that are forced to change in ways that are more or less subtle, making them a lot more engaging to the viewer, or joke characters that have one fight scene, a few one-liners, and a horrible death. While it's easy to place characters in one of these two categories for most of the cast, the Deep manages to be one of the few that blurs that line, as while he's important enough to still be alive as of this episode, he could still be the same Deep that tried to force himself onto Starlight in the pilot. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the Deep hasn't been in the limelight, as he did join a cult and break up with his media coach. However, he could still make the same mistakes. You could call it lazy writing because everyone else will look at the Deep the same way despite 4 seasons having passed. However, this seemingly constant refusal to change works in his favor too. In a show where characters are constantly dying or making seemingly drastic changes left and right, having a constant source of whatever the Deep brings is a good thing for the show. For the most part, he's a comic relief, but the pacing of the show makes it so that it's not that tedious or repetitive like the ending of Furiosa. So yeah. All in all, there are a few possible reasons for the Deep's popularity, and this video will attempt to examine them and get a conclusion on why everyone seems to love him or hate him. Just talk about him, I guess. The Deep, for the most part, is a comic relief character. Like, straight up, he doesn't serve much purpose as a tool in the show besides make the audience laugh. And while the argument could be made that everyone in the show is a comic relief because of the absurd nature of certain scenes, the Deep provides more comedy than, let's say, Frenchie with his reaction of "what the fuck" to every situation, or Butcher's weird impression of Shadow the Hedgehog. While most of the Deep's jokes are just that he's stupid, horny, and a suck-up, it works because the setup is almost always different, enough to warrant the same punchline. For those who don't get the premise of The Boys, it's just, what if superheroes were real, but they're all self-absorbed sociopaths? At the top of this superhero pyramid is the corporation called Vought, who basically owns all of them because they created them using drugs on them while they were kids. What the normal quirkless people like you and I see though is the Seven, which is the in-universe equivalent of the Justice League, a team of normally 7 superheroes that represents the best of the best among these superpowered individuals. This team has characters that pretty much everyone loves, which is why it's funny in concept that a character like the Deep can make it on this team for how seemingly incompetent he is. It's made very clear in the first episode that the Deep is one of the most depraved individuals in the Seven, as he tries and succeeds to violate Starlight. While he seems threatening and powerful, this is a facade that breaks away quickly, as for the rest of the show, the audience realizes that the Deep is quite literally a diversity pick who was chosen purely based on media presence. Very ironic considering that for the most part of the first 2 seasons, the Deep is kicked out of the Seven for misconduct and joins a cult. Not only is the Deep a joke in terms of being a parody of characters like Aquaman who are only useful in very specific situations, the way in which they make this character even more insane is by adding just a twinge of bestiality, which in and of itself is actually fucked up. However, the way they presented it is comedic, as they try to present the Deep's relationship with that supermarket lobster as seriously as they try to make Huey and Annie's. I think the gravity that the Deep's actions are treated with make everything much funnier, as at the end of the day, most of the hijinks he gets up to aren't necessarily that insane. And if they are insane, they would be played completely straight. Let's take some examples. In the first season, the Deep tries to help a dolphin escape mistreatment at the boys' equivalent of SeaWorld. In a slight parody of Saving Willy, this whole sequence is balls to the wall insane when you consider that this is a grown man in a superhero costume trying to take a dolphin out of an abusive environment while hanging it in the back of a moving van. This entire time, the Deep is talking about maybe doing things with the dolphin later, maybe put that blowhole to use, who knows. This scene though is played completely straight as a high stakes escape, and for some fucked up reason, certain viewers may be inclined to feel sympathy for the dolphin when it dies. Another similar moment is in season 2 episode 3 when the Deep summons a whale to try to stop the boys because that's like the only thing he can do, only for it to fail miserably as the whale is beached shortly after. While this moment is probably less funny laugh out loud than the dolphin escape, it's memorable because of the grand buildup of the arrival of the Deep and its subsequent failure that was the beaching, showing us that even though the Deep is mostly presented as a joke, he can still be a threat. Sometimes. Very rarely. Most of these jokes, however, are related to his connection with the sea, which would make him one note. However, the Deep's comedy also comes from his many one-liners and amazing line deliveries. The boys' marketing team is very much aware of Chase Crawford's popularity when it comes to delivering these one-liners, as Deep Thoughts with the Deep are regularly pushed out to both new and returning fans of the boys. The Deep is a character who more or less stays the same across 4 seasons and in some ways even regresses. This part of the script was written after I finished season 4 and, I mean, every one of my points were confirmed. In episode 7, when Deep and Noir jump the boys, Deep is shown to be spiteful against Starlight, bringing things up like the Me Too movement. He's so popular because he's so easy to get. The most development he gets with the season is his friendship with Black Noir, as while he does kill his girlfriend who is shown to like him a lot, instead of growing to become a better person like A-Train has been all season, Deep just becomes a bigger Homelander meat writer, which really helps simplify his character arc. Although he's seemingly more stupid, with how he can't write Ashley's name correctly despite having known her for who knows how long. The Deep is still a threat, was seen with how he kills a Vought employee in the last episode. And even in this supposedly threatening scene, you still get more conditioning to the fact that Deep is so pathetic because right before killing the guy, he asks for positive reinforcement, showing that he would do anything to get the attention that he thinks he deserves. And while this is sociopathic tendencies, it's still so pathetic to watch and just slightly funny because now people are conditioned to think that Deep will just fail anywhere he goes, because even then it seemed like for the most part he was gonna let that guy go because we've been so conditioned to Deep's stupidity. This is a double-edged sword, as while he will remain to be funny and popular in the way that he is, I don't think he can get the redemption arc like A-Train did this season, which is kind of saddening because the Deep had the potential, but ultimately him dying as a unredeemed, pathetic villain is a funnier way to go. I don't think people will complain about it because the Deep right now is at his peak. While at the end of the day he's still a diversity hire and is the weakest link in the 7, normal human beings could not take him in a fight. If you want a comparison to another character with similar traits, you could take Okuyasu from JoJo's Part 4. Okuyasu is as smart as a kettle full of hot water, but he's really powerful, and if he uses powers correctly, he'd be able to eliminate anyone in his way. But the writers have better ideas, and it somehow works out as both Deep and Okuyasu are very popular comic reliefs, in contrast to a character like Korg from the MCU, who is not as popular as he was when Thor Ragnarok came out. So the Deep is popular simply because he plays a role as a funny guy in an otherwise edgy and gritty world. However, I believe there is more going on here, as being funny only takes you so far. Having one-liners in the MCU was fun for the first 2 Iron Man movies, however when everyone just becomes Tony Stark, it gets tiring really quickly. The reasoning is probably more of a stretch than the comedy aspect, but I believe that the Deep is also popular because people identify with him and hope that he can still see the wrong in his actions eventually. In the first 2 seasons, the Deep, while still being a horrible person, is still shown with some humanity. For example, he learns what it's like to be a victim when a girl fingers his gills, and the audience develops some sympathy for him after Patton Oswalt sings a song, in what might be the greatest scene in any superhero media ever. Additionally, Deep shows a more sensitive side to him, which when you're in a world full of irrational sociopaths, goes a long way. Deep in the first 2 seasons is shown to be a lot more human than the others in the 7, especially A-Train, which is why people have hope for him. Seeing A-Train's gradual redemption over 4 seasons have given people hope, and people keep holding on to that hope, but it was dwindling in season 3 when we realized that he wasn't going to change. I think part of what makes him so popular is his terrible relatability, as I think a lot of people resonate with wanting to be a better person but being afraid to change, as you may make wrong decisions and hurt people, or in this case sea creatures. While Deep had some of that in his character initially, his moral compass kept changing until eventually he found himself so deep, into Homelander's shenanigans that he had no choice but to become more insane. He's had opportunities to quit before, but his lack of direction in life has led him to follow the wrong people. I'm sure certain people in life have experienced trusting someone they shouldn't have and then getting hurt by it, even though they didn't really ask for any of that. But that's one of the harsh truths of life. You're gonna have to make mistakes and change eventually, because otherwise you just stagnate in mediocrity and regret and end just like your boy Kevin. This stagnation then leads to delusion, which is part of what makes the Deep so funny to see on screen. I guess we've gone full circle then. In conclusion, adding moral ambiguity to villains equals relatability, and funny equals popularity of villain in multiple ways like Twitter shitposts or conservative sigmas. Do I think it's deserved? 100%. The Deep is one of the surprisingly most complex characters in The Boys, despite having such a bizarre lack of development, despite, changing his moral compass every so often, and I'm glad he's getting so much recognition because Comic Deep is an even bigger joke. I'm glad they gave him some justice in this adaptation. Chase Crawford is an amazing actor and he's hot as hell, so more screen time in the form of fan service is not a problem. Give me more Deep screen time in season 5, please. I love the Deep. Deep is amazing, the Deep is the best character. No, I do not support his actions, but he is very funny to watch. With that, I thank you for watching, like and subscribe for more life-changing content, and goodbye.